You're doing your thing. Just tell me what happened then.
It was a 1907 white steam car. So the fuel line was clogged. So I was underneath it trying to clog it. And I said, blow some air through the line. Let's see if we can clear a line. And then boom, and suddenly, boom, I got a face full of gas. And then the pilot light jumped and my face caught on fire.
Jay Leno's 2022 garage fire wasn't just an accident. It was a warning sign of how far he'd fallen. Third-degree burns covered his face after gasoline exploded in his hands. But that wasn't the worst part. His marriage to Mavis is hiding secrets that would shock his fans. Their decision to never have children isn't the whole story. Behind closed doors, Jay's world is crumbling. The man who once ruled late-night television is now fighting battles nobody sees. And time is running out. Jay Leno was born James Douglas Muir Leno on April 28, 1950, in New Rochelle, a quiet town about 18 miles from Manhattan. His mother, Catherine, had come from Scotland at age 11 and never finished high school. But she worked hard every day and filled the house with a steady sense of duty. His father, Angelo, sold insurance and came from a small village in Italy called Flumeri. Their life was simple and every dollar mattered. But Jay grew up seeing two parents who kept going no matter how tight things got. New Rochelle was safe, but far from fancy. And Jay spent his early years learning practical lessons and helping with chores that taught him the value of work long before he understood comedy. Those early moments built strength in him without him even knowing it. When Jay turned 7, the family moved to Andover, Massachusetts, and he joined St. John's Preparatory School, a strict Catholic place where rules seemed to hold everything together. Jay started breaking those rules almost immediately, mostly because he could not resist making people laugh. He would pull pranks that drove teachers crazy. Once he even set off firecrackers in class and almost got expelled. His 5th grade teacher wrote on his report card that if Jay studied half as much as he tried to be funny, he would be a big star. The funny thing was, she did not know she was predicting the future. Even with all the trouble he caused, he worked hard and kept pushing himself. These school years shaped his voice and his courage, teaching him how to turn mischief into timing and timing into humor. Jay's older brother, Patrick, was the serious one. He served in Vietnam during one of the hardest phases of the war, and a fire during combat left him with severe burns that followed him for life. Even with the pain, he came home, studied hard, and became a lawyer. Jay admired him deeply. In 2002, complications from those wounds finally took Patrick's life, and Jay felt that loss shake his whole world. He had always seen his brother as tough and steady, someone who kept moving forward, even when the weight was heavy. Losing him made Jay think more about family, time, and how fragile everything can be. It stayed in his heart and shaped how he looked at the people he cared about. As a teenager, Jay worked every job he could find in Andover. At 14, he saved enough to buy a 1934 Ford pickup that he restored over 2 years. He flipped burgers at McDonald's and worked at a Ford dealership, where he took the long way around on test drives just because he loved how the engine sounded. He earned minimum wage, but saved almost everything. Those small jobs taught him discipline and made him careful with money. Even after he became famous, he kept the same habits and never spent beyond his comfort. His guidance counselor once looked him straight in the eye and said he should drop out and stick to McDonald's. Jay remembered that day for the rest of his life. He refused to accept it. He applied to Emerson College, got in on a partial scholarship in 1968, and pushed himself through every hard moment. He studied speech therapy and graduated in 1973. His mother's love for accents and old Scottish stories fed his interest in voices, and he soon found himself drawn toward comedy, even more than academics. High school had already given him a taste of performing. He once impersonated teachers so perfectly at a talent show that the room shook with laughter. but the school suspended him for crossing the line. He did not realize it then, but that moment taught him something important. Humor could lift people or upset them. Timing mattered. Sensitivity mattered. Voice mattered. All of that would guide him later. At 16, he bought a beat-up 1963 Chevrolet Impala with a strong 427 cubic inch engine that was loved by drag racers. He fixed it himself in the garage and took friends on joyrides. The car became the beginning of his lifelong obsession. Cars were freedom to him at that age, and they became a core part of who he was for the rest of his life. His mother's Scottish roots gave him another gift. She told stories with a dry wit and a calm tone that slipped jokes in without warning. Jay studied her without even meaning to. Her voice, her humor, her timing, all of it soaked into him and became part of his early comedy style. She showed him that jokes did not always need big noise. Sometimes they just needed honesty and a small twist. By 1970, he was performing in Boston clubs while still in college, earning $20 or $25 per gig, sometimes even at strip clubs if that meant paying tuition. He joked about dorm life, buses, professors, and dating. Just simple moments that people recognized. By his senior year, he was hosting talent shows and small events on campus. He had found his rhythm. He had found his voice. In 1973, he founded the Emerson Comedy Workshop. It was the school's first comedy club, and more than 200 students showed up for the first show. His jokes about ordering fries at Broken Drive through made everyone laugh because they felt real. The club grew fast and helped form the early Boston comedy scene that later produced big names. Jay did not know it then, but he had started something that would last for decades. To stay in college, he drove a school bus, earning $1.50 an hour. The kids were loud and restless, so he used jokes to keep them calm. Over time, he realized that if he could make children laugh at 7 in the morning, he could make any audience laugh. That job taught him crowd control, rhythm, and the importance of adjusting material for whoever was in front of him. For his thesis, he studied speech patterns in comedy. He listened to Bob Hope and Don Rickles and broke down their timing and tones. He practiced impressions, especially Richard Nixon, whose awkward pauses and stiff delivery Jay mimicked with almost perfect accuracy. Students begged him to do it at parties and events. That impression became part of his early routines and helped him understand how much comedy lives in the voice more than the words. After graduating in 1973, he drove to Los Angeles with only $300 and a van full of notebooks. Gas prices were high because of the oil crisis, so every mile felt heavy. He slept in his van for weeks and performed at open mics where the pay was sometimes just food. Some nights he slept in empty houses that real estate agents had left open. It was tough, but he kept going because every show sharpened him. By 1977, he made his debut on The Tonight Show, and everything changed. In LA, he found his first real writing job on Good Times, helping craft punchlines for Jimmy Walker. He even helped shape the line that became famous across America, "Din o' meat." Working behind the scenes showed him how jokes had to land for millions of people at the same time. That job taught him discipline and structure. He warmed crowds at the Troubadour in West Hollywood, hyping audiences before stars like Johnny Mathis and Tom Jones. He improvised, teased the crowd, and joked about the club's quirks. Some nights, people remembered him more than the headliners. It trained him to handle any room, even the toughest ones. By 1976, he was performing at the Comedy Store almost 300 nights a year. To stand out, he rode his motorcycle straight into the club and up to the stage. Crowds loved it. The place was filled with smoke, noise, and hungry comedians. But Jay kept pushing. The long nights were worth it. Every show added a layer to his skill. Money was tight, though. In the mid-1970s, he lived out of his Lincoln Continental, showered at the YMCA, and ate from vending machines. But he kept calling clubs to ask for stage time and performed for free if needed. That struggle built a deep toughness in him and made every success later feel earned. His first movie role came in 1978 in American Hot Wax. He earned $500, just enough to cover expenses. It did not make him a star, but it gave him confidence that doors could open, even small ones. Jay Leno was 26 when he stepped onto the stage of The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson on March 2, 1977, and it felt like the moment his whole life had been leading toward. He had only 5 minutes to prove himself. He talked about family quirks and everyday moments that everyone understood, and the crowd locked onto him right away. By the time he finished, the audience was on its feet. Even Johnny Carson, who almost never praised newcomers, called his act clean and accessible and said he might be the next big thing. The Tonight Show was the gate every comedian dreamed of walking through, and once Jay walked through it, everything started moving fast. He kept coming back throughout the late 1970s, becoming a familiar face to people watching at home, and this debut turned him from a club comic into a national name. Not long after that, he landed a steady gig on the Marilyn McCoo and Billy Davis Jr. show in 1977. It was the first network series ever hosted by a black couple, and Jay appeared in all 6 episodes that summer. Each week, he delivered monologues that mixed current events with jokes about his own looks, especially his jaw, which people never stopped talking about. Families watched the show on Friday nights, and Jay used that chance to sharpen his timing and try new ideas. By the end of the summer, people knew him not just as a club comedian, but as someone who could connect with all kinds of audiences. That growth set him up for everything that came next. 8 years later, in 1985, Jay filmed his first HBO comedy special, Jay Leno and the American Dream, live at the Wiltern Theater in Los Angeles. It reached 1.2 million viewers, which was huge for a cable comedy event at the time. He joked about Reagan-era politics, American consumer habits, and the strange things people do every day. The Wiltern was packed with fans who had watched him climb from small clubs to big stages. That special confirmed what people were starting to believe. Jay was a national comedy star with a sharp mind, an everyman voice, and a talent for mixing real life with humor. The success of the special opened doors to more major shows and moved him closer to his own late-night future. By 1986, he was touring across the country. One night at Zany's in Chicago, a heckler threw a beer bottle at the stage. Instead of losing control, Jay turned the moment into a 10-minute ad-lib roast that flipped the whole room against the heckler. His quick wit saved the night and became a story comedians still talk about. His shows kept selling out, and his energy on stage made him one of the most dependable performers in the country. These moments built the kind of reputation that TV networks trusted, and soon he was getting more chances to fill in on The Tonight Show. In 1987, NBC made Jay the permanent guest host for Johnny Carson. He stepped in more than 50 times a year. Carson trusted almost no one with that seat, so this was a rare honor. Jay introduced bits like jaywalking, where he stopped people on the street and asked simple questions like who invented the telephone or who was president during World War II. The wrong answers were so unbelievable that the segment became legendary. His presence on the show kept growing until audiences felt like he belonged there. By the time Carson retired in 1992, Jay already felt like the natural next host. But getting the job was not simple. When Carson announced his retirement, Jay was in a tense battle with David Letterman. NBC held a press conference about the transition, and Jay showed up disguised as a reporter with glasses and a fake nose. He moved through the crowd quietly, asking questions so he could understand the mood in the room. It gave him insight into what executives wanted and what the press was thinking. This strange but clever move helped him shape his pitch and push himself ahead in the race for the job. People later called it one of the boldest moments in the Tonight Show battle. On May 25, 1992, he stepped onto the stage as the new official host of The Tonight Show. The premiere pulled in 16.1 million viewers, one of the biggest debuts in late-night history. He opened with jokes about President George H.W. Bush, who was struggling with re-election. Billy Crystal was the first guest. The night showed that Jay could carry the show with confidence. It also showed the size of the audience waiting to see how he would fill Carson's shoes. Behind the scenes, things were messy. The show's producer, Helen Kushnick, enforced a policy where guests were not allowed to call the show directly. She wanted all bookings controlled by her, and she pushed agents and managers to put their stars on The Tonight Show before any other program. This led to huge fights with publicists and even sparked a battle with the Arsenio Hall show. Her temper and threats made the staff miserable. People quit, agents complained, and NBC finally fired her 4 months after the show launched. The atmosphere she left behind made everyone nervous, but Jay continued to defend her publicly and said she was misunderstood, which caused even more tension. In 1993, Jay signed a 5-year contract worth $40 million. It was proof that NBC believed in him, even with all the chaos. Kushnick's firing closed a painful chapter, and Jay's extension made it clear he was there to stay. 2 years later, in 1995, the show won its first Primetime Emmy for Outstanding Variety Series. The win helped steady the team and showed that audiences still connected with Jay's talent and humor, even after all the struggles behind the scenes. Between 1995 and 2000, Jay reached his peak. One of his biggest moments came on January 26, 1998, when President Bill Clinton sat across from him just days after the Monica Lewinsky scandal broke. Jay mixed humor with careful questions, creating an interview that pulled in around 20 million viewers. It was one of the most watched late-night episodes ever and showed that Jay could handle heavy political moments while still being funny. During these years, he also created a weekly segment called Headlines in 1996. He showed strange real-world clippings from newspapers, and the funniest ones came from fans. By 1997, the show received over 100,000 submissions a year. One headline that people never forgot was about a man suing his toilet for emotional distress. The segment became so popular that other shows started copying it, and it helped keep The Tonight Show fresh and fun. In 1998, Jay renewed his contract again, this time for 5 years and $100 million. It made him the highest-paid late-night host of his era. He spent a lot of that money on his love for cars. He built a huge garage in Burbank with more than 180 vehicles by 2005, including rare pieces like a 1906 Stanley steamer. He worked on many of the cars himself, restoring engines and polishing details. His collection became part of his identity, and he sometimes brought the cars on the show to share their stories. After the attacks of September 11, 2001, Jay started hosting remote broadcasts from places like Camp Pendleton. He wanted to lift morale and show support for the troops. He donated his fees from those episodes to relief funds. These shows mixed light humor with heartfelt moments and became some of the most meaningful episodes of his career. In 2004, he celebrated his 3,000th episode of The Tonight Show. The night was filled with guests from the past, including Arnold Schwarzenegger, who had famously announced his run for governor on the show in 2003. By this time, Jay had hosted more than 2,500 guests and had reached a place in late-night history that even Johnny Carson never reached. The milestone proved how deeply he had shaped American television and how far he had come since that first 5-minute set in 1977 when he walked onto Carson's stage and changed his life. Howard Stern walked onto The Tonight Show on November 30th, 1995, with the kind of energy that made even the calmest room shake. Jay Leno expected jokes and maybe a little chaos, but he did not expect what followed. Stern brought 2 models, Nikki Tyler and Janine Lindemulder, dressed in bikinis that already made the audience shout with excitement. Then he told them to kiss right there under the studio lights. The crowd got louder. Leno tried to smile, but his eyes kept darting around like he was hoping someone would pull the plug. Before he could move the show forward, Stern pushed things even further and started sucking one of the model's toes on live television. The audience screamed. Leno froze. He tried to go to the next segment, but the noise refused to die down. During the commercial break, he walked off the set because he could not even hear himself think. NBC later cut the entire moment from the final broadcast, but Stern bragged the next morning that he had gone past what anyone would call acceptable. Leno called him and said it was pure debauchery. That one moment changed everything. Stern was never invited back, and NBC spent months dealing with angry viewers who wondered how it ever went on air. The tension around Leno did not stop there. The battle between him and David Letterman had been building since 1992, when Johnny Carson stepped down and NBC picked Leno instead of Letterman. Inside the network, people whispered that Leno's team had spread stories about Letterman's personal life to make executives doubt him. Some insiders called it a campaign designed to knock Letterman out of the running. Leno's manager, Helen Kushnick, was accused of telling these stories straight to the network bosses. When Letterman lost the job, he walked out of NBC and launched The Late Show on CBS, putting himself right across from Leno every night. Through the 1990s, Letterman joked about Leno on air with a tone that didn't sound like comedy. It sounded like hurt and anger. Even years later, both men kept bringing up the feud in interviews. Letterman said the whole media frenzy was embarrassing, but it was clear the choice still stung. That long fight shaped late-night television for decades. The biggest storm came with Conan O'Brien. In 2004, Leno promised Conan that he would leave The Tonight Show in 2009. He said it on camera, with a smile, making it sound like the cleanest handoff in television history. NBC made the deal official, and Conan spent the next 5 years preparing for his dream job. But when 2009 arrived, Leno did not want to go. NBC built him a new show at 10 p.m., hoping to keep everyone happy. Instead, his ratings tanked. Conan's numbers dropped too, and affiliates complained that Leno's show was hurting their nightly news. NBC panicked and told Conan they wanted to move him to 12:05 a.m. Conan refused. He said moving The Tonight Show to midnight would destroy it. In January 2010, everything exploded. Leno's show was canceled. NBC tried to push Conan into a deal he didn't want. Conan walked away with a $45 million settlement, while Leno returned to The Tonight Show. Critics said Leno had betrayed him. Some even called him a serial killer for killing Conan's dream. The backlash was so loud that the whole late-night world tilted for a while. Behind all that noise was another storm building in Leno's own team. His manager, Helen Kushnick, had helped him get The Tonight Show, but she ruled his world with anger. Staff members said she screamed daily, slammed phones, and even once threw one at Leno during rehearsal. He stayed silent because he felt he owed his career to her. Those years were the darkest days he ever faced professionally. NBC finally fired her, not because Leno demanded it, but because the network could not take her behavior anymore. Leno later admitted that he kept quiet out of fear of losing everything he had worked for. It showed how heavy the pressure was behind the scenes and how much he endured to keep his job. When Leno returned to The Tonight Show in 2010 after Conan left, leaked memos revealed that he had threatened legal action if NBC did not give the show back to him. Fans were stunned. For many, this confirmed the belief that he cared more about his career than the promises he made. Conan left with $45 million, but the public fury landed on Leno. They said he stole guests from Conan, hurt Conan's ratings, and then took the show back like nothing happened. His image changed overnight. People who once saw him as the steady company man now saw him as someone who put ambition above loyalty. The scandal shook late-night television and left wounds that still show up in conversations today. The conflict reached its peak in 2009 and 2010. Leno had hosted The Tonight Show for 17 years when he stepped down in May 2009. Conan took over and pulled nearly 10 million viewers on his first night. Leno's new show at 10 p.m. drew only 5.5 million within months. Critics shook their heads at segments that felt off and uncomfortable. Local stations complained because Leno caused their nightly news ratings to fall by as much as 25%, and in some cities, nearly 50%. By January 2010, NBC had to act. They tried to push Leno back to 11:35 p.m. and slide Conan to midnight. Conan said it violated the whole idea of The Tonight Show and quit. Fans gathered outside NBC studios with signs chanting, "Fire Jay." The ratings collapsed, and the network looked lost, as if the fight had cracked the foundation of late-night television. Years later, the chaos finally settled. Leno returned and stayed until February 6, 2014. He had hosted 4,610 episodes by the time he said goodbye. His final night brought out everyone from Billy Crystal to Oprah Winfrey. Billy Crystal led a funny, emotional version of So Long, Farewell that filled the studio with nostalgia. Garth Brooks sang The Dance and Friends in Low Places, while Leno watched with a tired but grateful smile. Off camera, he talked about how he drove home every night just to be with his wife Mavis, because he loved ending his day with her no matter how busy he was. His goodbye episode pulled an 8.2 rating and became one of the most watched farewells in late-night history. He thanked his staff, thanked the viewers, and passed the torch to Jimmy Fallon with the weight of 2 decades behind him. In 2015, Leno stepped into a new life with Jay Leno's Garage. Cars had always been his escape, and now the world got to see it up close. The show premiered on October 7, 2015, with 1.1 million viewers, the biggest original series launch in CNBC history. His giant garage in Burbank held everything from a 1914 Detroit electric car to supercars like the McLaren P1. The show mixed jokes, deep car knowledge, and celebrity guests trying wild machines. It won a Primetime Emmy in 2016 for Outstanding Short-Format Nonfiction Program. By 2022, the YouTube version had more than 1.5 million subscribers, and videos with stars like Bill Gates and Arnold Schwarzenegger pulled in millions of views. People came for the cars, but stayed for Leno's easy humor and simple joy for engines and old metal. Then came the scare that made everyone gasp. On November 12, 2022, Leno was working on a 1907 white steam car in his garage. He tried clearing a clogged fuel line by blowing air through it. Gasoline sprayed into his face and hit the pilot light. Flames rushed over him in a second. His friend Kevin Kalaki dragged him away, smothered the fire, and called 911. Leno suffered serious burns on his face, hands, and chest. His face alone had third-degree burns. At the Grossman Burn Center, he spent 9 days undergoing surgeries, skin grafts, and hyperbaric oxygen treatments. Even through the pain, he joked that he got a face full of gas and then lit himself up. Fans were shaken, but he came back to television and YouTube with the same calm smile. It showed the toughness behind his easy style. Before all these storms, there was a moment in January 1976 when Jay Leno first met Mavis Nicholson at the Comedy Store in Los Angeles. She was a young feminist writer drawn to smart men, and Leno's jokes caught her attention. They started talking and found out they cared about the same things, especially fighting domestic violence, which was a rising issue in the mid-70s. Their connection came from both humor and shared values. They became partners in life and activism long before fame changed their world. They married on November 3, 1980, in a small living room ceremony that matched their love for simple moments. The date also happened to be the wedding anniversary of Leno's parents. There was no engagement ring because Mavis wanted to save money for a home. Los Angeles real estate was getting expensive, and buying a condo felt smarter than buying jewelry. Their wedding showed who they were, two people who cared more about stability and partnership than glamour. They also made the choice to never have children. They talked about it for years and decided their life worked better without kids. Mavis told Oprah in 2002 that they enjoyed having the freedom to keep dating each other. Leno could jump on planes to finish shows and still make it home. Their careers grew. Their bond stayed strong. In the early 2000s, only 22% of wealthy married couples in the United States chose to remain child-free, and the Lenos became part of that growing number. Mavis built her own powerful identity through activism. She founded the Women's Rights Fund in the 1990s and produced documentaries like The Uprising of 34, which brought new attention to the struggles of textile workers. The film was nominated for major awards and aired on PBS and international stations, reaching millions of viewers. Jay supported her fully, donating Tonight Show income to her projects. Together, they raised awareness for issues that rarely made headlines.